Hi and welcome again to the chapter 3 Basic Grammar of A1 level of the French course. So the first section of this chapter will be about French nouns. So nouns are an essential part of language as they represent people, places, things, and also ideas. In French, nouns have two important characteristics: gender and number, which means singular or plural. In French, singulier ou pluriel. Understanding French nouns is crucial for constructing sentences and expressing ideas accurately. Gender of French nouns. Every noun in French is assigned a gender, masculine or feminine. The gender of a noun is not always predictable based on its meaning, so it needs to be learned along with the noun itself. However, there are some general patterns that can help determine the gender of certain nouns. For example, words ending in "e" are often feminine. It is important to consult a dictionary or reference for the gender of specific nouns, as there are exceptions to these patterns. Nouns in French can be either singular or plural, depending on whether they refer to one or multiple identities. Forming the plural of nouns is important for proper noun agreement in French sentences. Regular nouns often form their plural by adding s to the end of the singular noun. However, there are exceptions and irregular nouns that have unique plural forms. So, for the examples of forming plural nouns, regular nouns, we have un livre, which means a book, becomes des livres, which means some books. Nouns ending in s, x, z, like un prix, which means a price. Un prix becomes des prix, which means some prices. Des prix. Nouns ending in al, au, eau, like un animal, which means an animal, becomes des animaux, which means some animals. Irregular nouns like a horse, un cheval, becomes des chevaux, which means some horses. So, engage in exercises to practice forming the plural of nouns. Construct sentences using singular and plural nouns to reinforce proper noun agreement. Also, pay attention to the gender and agreement between the noun and other elements in the sentence. Recap the key points covered in the topic. So, nouns in French have gender and number, as we saw, singular or plural. Regular nouns form their plural by adding s. Regular nouns form their plural by adding s. Also, there are exceptions and irregular nouns with unique plural forms. Gender of nouns is not always predictable based on meaning. So pay very attention to this sentence. Gender of nouns is not always predictable based on meaning. Consult always dictionaries or references for noun gender and plural forms. So, understanding French nouns is crucial for accurate communication in the language. Also, practice using nouns in sentences and expand vocabulary to enhance language skills. This is very important. Also, continued exposure and practice, as we always say, will strengthen knowledge of noun gender and plural forms. Now, we're gonna pass to the second section of the third chapter, French articles. So articles are small words that precede nouns and provide information about the noun's gender and number. In French, there are definite articles, the, and indefinite articles, like a, n. Understanding how to use articles correctly is essential for accurate sentence construction. So definite articles indicate specific nouns and can be translated as the. In French, the definite articles have different forms depending on the gender and number of the noun, as we're gonna see. For example, for masculine singular, le, we use le. Example, le livre, because it's masculine and singular, which means the book. Le livre. Feminine singular, we use la. Example, the flower, la fleur. La fleur, the flower. Masculine plural, for example, the books, les livres, les livres. And feminine plural, the flowers, les fleurs, les fleurs. As for indefinite articles, they indicate non-specific or unidentified nouns and also can be translated as a or n. In French, the indefinite articles also vary based on the gender and number of the noun. For example, for masculine singular, un. For example, a book, un livre, un livre. For the feminine singular, we use une, une, U-N-E. Example, a flower, une fleur, une fleur. For the masculine plural, we use des, des, like des livres, which means some books. For the feminine plural, use also des. Example, some flowers, des fleurs, des fleurs. For the partitive articles, they are used to indicate an indefinite quantity of something. They are used with uncountable nouns or when referring to a portion of something. In French, the partitive article is du, du for masculine nouns and de la, for feminine nouns. Example, du pain, du pain, which means some bread. For feminine, we use de la. Example, de la soupe. De la soupe, which means some soup. Contracted articles are used when the definite articles le and les are followed by a noun starting with a vowel or a silent H. Definite articles contract with the preposition a, which means to, and de, which means of, or from. For example, for masculine singular, we use au. Example, to the restaurant, which means au restaurant. Au restaurant. For the feminine singular, we use à la. Example, to the house, à la maison, à la maison. For the plural, we use au with an X, au, a, u, x. For example, to the United States, aux États-Unis, aux États-Unis. So for the review and practice part, we're gonna make a quick recap of the key points covered in this topic. So for the definite articles, we use le, la, les. For the indefinite articles, we use un, une, des. For the partitive articles, we use du, de la. For the contracted articles, we use au, à la, au, avec x. So le, un, du, au are for singular and masculine, la, une, de la, à la for the feminine singular, les, des, au with x at the end for the plural. Engage in practice exercises to reinforce the understanding of article usage. So, understanding and mainly correctly using French articles is crucial for accurate sentence formation. What I suggest is that you continue practicing article usage to enhance language proficiency and also develop fluency in French. Topic 3 or section 3, singular and plural nouns. In this topic, we're gonna see that in French, like in many languages, nouns can be either singular or plural. It is crucial to understand how to form the plural of nouns for proper noun agreement. So, for most regular nouns in French, you can form the plural by adding s to the end of the singular noun. For example, un livre, which means a book, becomes des livres, which means some books. Une fleur, a flower in English, that becomes des fleurs, which means some flowers. Some nouns do not follow the regular pattern and have the same form for both singular and plural. These include nouns that already end in s, x, or z, as we're gonna see in this example. For example, a bus, which is un bus, becomes des bus, des bus. Un prix, which means a price, becomes des prix, des prix. So what do we understand from this example is that nouns that already have s, x, or z at the end, you don't take extra s or x or z, even if we put them in plural. Nouns ending in al, au, eau, for example, or in French al, au, eau, form their plurals by replacing the final l, u, au with ux. Example: un animal, that becomes des animaux, un cadeau, becomes des cadeaux, So what do we understand from this example is that nouns that end with a, l, a, u, or e, a, u, we replace the l, u with ux. Passing to the irregular plural forms, where some nouns have irregular plural forms and do not follow a consistent pattern. So these plurals must be learned individually. For example, un cheval, a horse, that becomes des chevaux, Another example, un œil, which is an eye, becomes des yeux, which means some eyes. Exceptions and special cases. There are exceptions and special cases when forming plural nouns in French. It is very, very important to consult a dictionary or always have a reference for irregular nouns or nouns with unique plural forms. Now, to practice some exercises. Engage in exercises to practice forming the plural of nouns. Try constructing sentences using singular and plural nouns, but pay very attention to the agreement between the noun and other elements in the sentence. A review and recap of the key points covered in this topic. So we saw how to form the plural of regular nouns, plurals with nouns ending in s, x, z, al, au, and also e, a, u. We saw also irregular plural forms and exceptions and special cases. So to conclude this topic, we conclude by emphasizing the importance of understanding noun singular and plural forms for proper noun agreement in French. We encourage students to practice forming plurals and to familiarize themselves with irregular plural nouns. Fourth section of Chapter 3, Gender of Nouns. In French, nouns have a gender. They can be either masculine or feminine. Understanding the gender of nouns is important for correct article and adjective agreement. While some nouns have obvious gender indications, others need to be learned individually. Certain patterns can help determine the gender of nouns, although there are exceptions. For example, masculine nouns often end in consonants, as the book, le livre, le livre. Feminine nouns often end in e, e in French. Example, la fleur, la fleur. However, it is important to note that many nouns do not follow these patterns. Some noun categories have common genders. For most countries and continents are masculine. Example, le Canada, le Canada. Most languages are feminine. Example, la langue française, la langue française, la langue française, which means the French language. Professions often have different forms for males and females. For example, un acteur, un acteur, which means male actor. For the feminine, une actrice, une actrice, female actress. For learning the gender of nouns, it is a process that requires practice and exposure to the language. So make use of dictionaries, flashcards, and language resources to memorize the gender of specific nouns. As you encounter new vocabulary, take note of the corresponding article and gender. Engage in exercises to practice assigning gender to nouns. Create sentences using masculine and feminine nouns, ensuring proper article and adjective agreement. Also, review common noun categories to reinforce gender associations. Review and recap of the topic. So the key points covered in this topic were: in the first place, nouns in French have gender masculine or féminin, masculin ou féminin. Gender indicators like consonants for masculine, e endings for feminine. Common gender categories such as countries, languages, professions, etc. What I suggest is that you continue practicing and also expanding your vocabulary to develop a solid understanding of noun genders using dictionaries, for example, or any other language references. So, to conclude, understanding the gender of nouns is very essential for proper article and adjective agreement in French. We suggest that you keep practicing and exposing yourself to the language in order to reinforce gender associations and also improve language proficiency. Fifth section of chapter 3, Adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe or modify nouns or pronouns. In French, adjectives must agree in gender and number with the nouns they modify. Understanding how to use adjectives correctly is crucial for effective communication and proper sentence construction. Agreement of adjectives. Adjectives in French have to agree in gender, as we said, and also number with the noun they refer to. For example, for masculine singular nouns, masculin singulier, the adjective remains in its basic form. For example, un livre intéressant. Un livre intéressant, which means an interesting book. Un livre intéressant. For feminine singular nouns, the adjective usually adds an e in French, at the end. For example, a magnificent flower, which means in French, une fleur magnifique. Une fleur magnifique. We added e to un. For plural nouns, regardless of gender, the adjective adds an s at the end. For example, interesting books in plural. Interesting books. Des livres intéressants. Des livres intéressants. Position of adjectives. In French, adjectives generally come after the noun they modify. However, there are certain adjectives that precede the noun. We're gonna see some examples, of course. First example, a big book, which means un grand livre. Un grand livre. In this example, we can see that the adjective comes before the noun. The adjective is grand and the noun is livre. Une vieille maison. Une vieille maison. Une belle fleur. Une belle fleur. We didn't say une fleur belle because the rule said that the adjective precede the noun, as we see in these three examples. Bicolor adjectives. So bicolor adjectives have different forms for masculine and feminine singular nouns. They usually end in a consonant in the masculine form and add an e in the feminine form. For example, un bon élève. Un bon élève, which means a good student, for the masculine singular. For the feminine singular, we say une bonne élève. Une bonne élève. Un petit chien. Un petit chien. For the feminine, une petite chienne. Une petite chienne. We're gonna practice some exercises. So engage in exercises to practice adjective agreement. Make sure to create sentences using different nouns and adjectives, ensuring proper agreement in gender and number. For example, describe a masculine singular noun with an adjective, like un livre intéressant. Un livre intéressant, which means in English an interesting book. An interesting book. Second example, describe a feminine singular noun with an adjective, like une fleur magnifique. Une fleur magnifique. Last but not least, describe plural nouns with adjectives. Example, des livres intéressants. Des livres intéressants. Interesting books. Interesting books in plural. So, reviewing the key points covered in this topic. So primarily we saw adjectives describing or modifying nouns. We saw also that adjectives agree in gender and also number with the noun. Adjectives generally come after the noun, but there are exceptions, of course, as we saw. Bicolor adjectives have different forms for masculine and feminine singular nouns. So I suggest you to continue practicing adjective agreement in order to enhance your language skills. Understanding how adjectives work in French is essential for expressing oneself accurately. Keep practicing and familiarizing yourself with different adjectives to improve your language proficiency. Sixth section of the chapter 3, adjective agreement. So adjective agreement is the concept of matching the gender and number of adjectives with the nouns they modify. In French, adjectives must agree in gender and number with the nouns they describe. Understanding how to properly match adjectives with nouns is important for accurate and also effective communication. Agreement of adjectives with masculine singular nouns. So in this section, we're gonna see that when describing a masculine singular noun, the adjective typically remains in its basic form, as we're gonna see in these examples. For the first example, we have an interesting book. Un livre intéressant. Un livre intéressant. An adorable dog. Un chien adorable. Un chien adorable. And the last example, a strong man, which means un homme fort. Un homme fort. Agreement of adjectives with feminine singular nouns. We just saw masculine, now we're gonna see feminine singular nouns. When describing a feminine singular noun, the adjective usually adds an e, or in French, e, at the end. For example, a magnificent flower, which means une fleur magnifique. Une fleur magnifique. A comfortable chair, which means une chaise confortable. Une chaise confortable. And the last example, an intelligent woman, which means une femme intelligente. Une femme intelligente. Adjectives. In French, adjectives generally come after the noun they modify. However, there are certain adjectives that precede the noun. Example, un joli jardin. Un joli jardin. Une grande maison. Une grande maison. And the last example, un petit animal. Un petit animal. Practicing exercises. So try to engage in exercises to practice adjective agreement. Create sentences using different nouns and adjectives, ensuring proper agreement in gender and number. Example of exercises that you can practice. You can describe a masculine singular noun with an adjective, like un livre intéressant. You can also describe a feminine singular noun with an adjective, like une fleur magnifique. Or you can also describe plural nouns with adjectives, like des livres intéressants. Des livres intéressants. Reviewing the key points covered in this topic, we saw adjective agreement is matching the gender and number of adjectives with nouns. We saw also that masculine singular nouns require adjectives in their basic form. Feminine singular nouns usually add an e or e at the end of adjectives. Plural nouns require adjectives to add an s at the end. We saw also that bicolor adjectives have different forms for masculine and feminine singular nouns. We saw also that adjectives generally come after the noun, but there are exceptions. We suggest you to continue practicing adjective agreement to enhance your language skills. So, properly matching adjectives with nouns is crucial for accurate and effective communication in French. I suggest that you keep practicing and familiarizing yourself with adjective agreement to improve your language proficiency. Seventh section of chapter 3. Placement of adjectives. In French, the placement of adjectives in relation to the noun they modify follows certain rules. Understanding the correct placement of adjectives is very important for clear and accurate expression. In this topic, we will explore the different positions of adjectives in French sentences. So in French, the most common placement of adjectives is after the noun. I repeat, is after the noun. For example, an intelligent man. Un homme intelligent. Un homme intelligent. Colorful flowers. Des fleurs colorées. Des fleurs colorées. Certain types of adjectives are usually placed before the noun. Examples: un grand livre. Un grand livre. Une petite fille. Une petite fille, which means a small girl. Des nouveaux vêtements. Des nouveaux vêtements, which means new clothes. Placement of adjectives, both before and after the noun. Some adjectives can be placed both before and after the noun, but the meaning can vary. For example, une vieille maison. Une vieille maison, which means an old house, versus une maison vieille. Une maison vieille, which means a house that is old. Un certain homme. Un certain homme, which means a certain man, versus un homme certain. Un homme certain, which means a man who is certain. Third example, une belle femme. Une belle femme, which means a beautiful woman, versus une femme belle. Une femme belle, which means a woman who is beautiful. Placement of adjectives, emphasizing adjectives. To emphasize or give importance to an adjective, it can be placed before the noun. For example, an excellent teacher, which means un excellent professeur. Un excellent professeur. A magnificent view, which means une magnifique vue. Une magnifique vue. An incredible talent. An incredible talent, which means un incroyable talent. Un incroyable talent. To practice exercises, I suggest that you engage in exercises to practice the placement of adjectives. Try to construct sentences using different adjectives, placing them correctly before or after the noun. For example, you can describe a house using adjectives before and also after the noun. Example, une petite maison charmante. Une petite maison charmante. You can also describe a person emphasizing an adjective before the noun, like un brillant étudiant. Un brillant étudiant, which means a brilliant student. You can also describe a scene with adjectives placed after the noun, like une rue animée. Une rue animée. Recap of the key points that we saw in this topic. Primarily, we saw that adjectives can be placed before or after the noun. We saw also that most adjectives are placed after the noun. We saw also that some adjectives are placed before the noun. Some adjectives can be placed both before and after the noun with different meanings. Pay very attention to this. Some adjectives can be placed both before and after the noun, but with different meanings. Emphasizing adjectives are placed before the noun. So I suggest that you continue practicing the placement of adjectives to enhance your language skills. To conclude, understanding the correct placement of adjectives is crucial for clear and accurate expression in French. You should keep practicing and familiarizing yourself with adjective placement to improve your language proficiency. 8th section of Chapter 3, Review and Practice. Review of key points that we saw in this chapter. We saw that French nouns have gender. They can be masculine or feminine. Understanding noun singular and plural forms is very important for proper noun agreement. We saw that French articles like definite, indefinite, or partitive provide information about noun gender and number. Adjectives in French must agree in gender and also number with the nouns they modify. Adjectives can be placed before or after the noun, with some exceptions and variations. Understanding these concepts is essential for building strong foundations in French grammar. Some practice exercises for noun plurals. Engage in exercises to practice forming the plural of nouns. For example, you can form the plural of the following nouns: un livre, which means a book; une fleur, which is a flower; un animal, which means an animal. You can also create sentences using singular and plural nouns, ensuring proper agreement with articles and adjectives. Or you can also translate the following sentences into French. The cats are playful. I have 3 pens. She likes beautiful flowers. For adjective agreement, you can engage in exercises to practice with nouns. For example, you can match the following adjectives with the appropriate noun. Intéressant. Second adjective, belle. Third adjective, nouveau. Nouveau, in plural. You can also describe the given nouns with the correct form of the adjective. Un homme, which is a man; une maison, which is a house; des livres, which is books. You can also translate the following sentences into French. He is a good student. She has a beautiful car. We saw tall buildings. For adjective placement, you can engage in exercises to practice the placement of adjectives. For example, you can place the following adjectives correctly in the sentences. Petite, petite. Second adjective, intelligent. Intelligent. Third adjective, belle. Belle. You can also describe the given nouns with adjectives, placing them before or after the noun. Une fleur. Un livre. Des amis. You can also translate the following sentences into French. First sentence: a big house, a kind teacher, a delicious meal. Some additional practice resources. You can continue practicing and reinforcing your understanding of basic grammar concepts. You can utilize additional resources such as textbooks, online exercises, and also language learning apps. You need to engage in conversations and writing exercises to apply the concepts in real-life situations. Remember, consistent practice will strengthen your skills and boost your confidence in French. So, congratulations on completing the review and the practice session. By revisiting and applying the key grammar concepts, you have taken significant steps towards mastering the basics of French. You have to continue practicing regularly and exploring more advanced topics to further enhance your language proficiency. Keep up the great work.